started.
Hello, everyone. How are you? This is Kleros community call of July 26th. It's great having you. I guess we have lots of different stuff for today. We had an extremely busy week. Last one, as you know, the team was at the UTC conference in Paris. Quite impressive how much it's growing. You know, the first time we were at the UTC was 2018. It was at a different venue. I mean, way smaller. Now it's getting very hard to get tickets, and this time they did it in two buildings, because apparently the building where they used to do it every year, so it's not anymore. So I guess this shows how much the Ethereum community has grown, and to this you need to add also all of the side events that other, blockchains or other projects organize. So let's let me see, maybe give you a short update, day by day, of what we were up to in Paris. So the Monday 17, we did a workshop at Assas, which is a important university in law from France, about how to use Kleros in the context of mediation, right? How to use Kleros in the context of helping mediators assess a number of situations that tend to happen in mediation proceedings. And I think we already discussed in a previous community call with Rob. Rob is a mediator, and not a mediator, he's a professional from the mediation industry based in Dubai, and he specializes in construction types of disputes, and he had this idea of building what we have dubbed the Kleros mediation bridge. So this is a way in which you can use Kleros to provide a decision in about some factual situation that might be important for a mediation case. In this case, we made a quite fun case where there was a dispute between a company that was a space tourism company that sent rocket to space for tourists, and a pharma company that was a sponsor of the project, and there was a dispute between them because of, I'm not going to explain all the case here, but there was a case that we used in order to test how this process would work. And it was super interesting. We had two teams. One team was the pharma company, the other team was the space tourism company. So, and we went through all of the workshop and gathered quite interesting feedback that we will use to make this process of mediation with Kleros a bit better. And we had very interesting people that showed up for the workshop. It was something that not a big event. It was just something that we wanted to gather two professionals from this industry, so we could get some feedback. And we have, for example, Christophe Duguay, who is a very important arbitrator from France. He was there. We had Sabine as well, who is a professor and legal expert from Paris. So it was super interesting. So that was, we did on Monday. And I think that Monday we also had William, your talk was on Monday, right?
Yep, that's right. I had a talk on parameterization on Monday. So I encourage, it's online now on YouTube, so I encourage people to check it out. So some of the ideas that we keep in mind about what constraints there are on how you can parameterize economic systems with using sort of Kleros as a running example, and the kinds of things you have to keep in mind to make the system to sort of balance the risk of economic attacks when sort of parameters adjust.
there you go. So we have that, all the work we do in improving our parameters. So that was Monday. Tuesday, I spoke at a conference called Paris.com at a panel with some important people from the French ecosystem. One of them, moderator, was the founder of Journal du Coin, which is an important business media from the crypto industry from France. And we discussed different elements, real world assets, use cases for crypto, well, a bunch of basically how to increase the adoption of crypto, and in my case, Kleros, into a number of different verticals or segments. And that was a panel. Then also on Tuesday, I went to this really interesting private launch for the Gnosis Pay product. As you know, well, Gnosis are very good friends of us, and they launched this super interesting service of the credit card that you can store your funds in a safe, and then you can spend with the card. So it's super interesting new financial application, and which I hopefully is going to be at some point available in where I live. It's not yet, but I'm very confident it will be very soon. So that was Tuesday, and also I guess we also went to the conference to watch talks and all that. Then Wednesday we had our own party. We did this at the rooftop near the area of the Decentralized. That, as you know, that's where Napoleon tomb is. Quite interesting event. Lots of people came. It was basically full, and also I liked it because it was music was not very loud, so we could talk. And the goal of these events for us is to try to get more integrations and people catch up with old friends and get more projects that we potentially want to use Kleros for its future solution. So we were super happy with that event. That was on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, I had my talk. My talk was about, we already know the work we are doing on how to build constitutions for DAOs, and we have been lately participating in a number of conferences. The first one was done in Harvard in April. The second one was done in Florence in, I think it was June. Basically the thing is that we have this new type of organizations that are DAOs, and these organizations bring a number of new advantages of being more engaging for a lot of people because they are more horizontal. They give more people the possibility to participate, but also they are challenging. I mean, these organizations are quite prone to dramas. There are lots of different examples. I mean, in my talk I review, for example, the case of Maker, the case of Aragon, and we also have our own little drama with humanity. So my talk was about how can we improve the governance of these organizations, basically by trying to go to learn from what people throughout history of political ideas have thought of how to build better institutions. The thing is that people who tend to work in DAO governance, many of them are, basically software developers, and they don't necessarily have the training of political scientists or people who have experience in politics. So there is a very big opportunity to try to have these two worlds converge, and this would result in a better governance systems for DAO to be more effective in decision making, to be more inclusive, and all that. So the goal was just to inspire a bit people who are working in this space and show them a bit what are the possibilities that exist in combining these different ideas coming from these areas. So that was my talk, and that was Thursday, and then Friday we had, of course, the highlight of the whole week. That was our football tournament. We did at rooftop, field football pitch in Paris, and we had I think 8 teams. And well, it was on the one hand great because it was a lot of traction. People came, played. On the other hand, was bad because we lost in the semifinals. I can't really blame anyone because they beat us. They worked better. They played better than us. So, right? Marcos or Juan, we don't have much to say about that we lost, right?
Yeah, and they were far superior than us. They have better team, so fair enough. We also sorry guys bring some really beautiful shirts that were like an awesome price and we couldn't get it. So might be next year in Brussels.
Well, we trained hard, and we'll see. It was disappointing, but that's okay. We will keep training, and next year I'm sure we're going to do it better. And maybe I don't know, maybe bring new players for the team. Maybe William should play next year. William, are you game for playing next year?
I have a year to train, but it's still optimistic.
Okay, well, we'll see. Okay, so we had that. We lost to Soler. So these people are, as you can imagine, very specialized in football. So what can I say? They basically kicked our ass. So but not much to add. And the winners of the tournament were the guys from Swap. And so congratulations to them. Well, I will let them know. Maybe you guys who were at the conference from the team, you can also give some impressions. Most of the people here, maybe Shotaro, William, whoever wants to tell a bit about what they liked about the conference or the week that we had, feel free to do it.
Maybe the conference is always nice for the team to meet in person, as most of us are remote, and good for coordination and some syncing the progress on V2 and just few final touches here and there. I think the Kleros event on Wednesday, good conversations, people building, potential arbitrables. It seems like every day there's a new marketplace or some sort of escrow service popping up, and surely one of them will find some product market fit, and Kleros will be there to arbitrate any disputes. And I don't know, all in all. Nothing so, nothing too crazy. Good for the team to sync up. Federico's talk is pretty nice, a bit inspiring. So it's good to keep in context. That's maybe a larger goal or overall mission of Kleros. In an ecosystem of DAOs and lots of successful dApps, as there's not so much real world use case. But good week.
Anyone else? Maybe Jim.
I think it's very nice to see that we are talk about so many use cases, and in the conference we were able to connect with people building these applications. One that caught my attention was one that is creating a registry for IP in the blockchain and a way to monetize that. And this is something that Federico talked about in the previous ECC talk. And at this moment, I don't think we had the expectation of someone building like it's putting that much effort because they already had funding and have been working on this for some time. So it's nice to see that things are materializing around the ideas that the team has been have been promoting for some time now. So yeah, that's my view.
Anyone else?
Maybe just
Yeah.
one comment, not strictly about the event, but sort of related to William's talk on parameterization and the courts. Yeah, I mean, it just came up in conversation that, perhaps a good model for setting future parameters is to maybe to vote on the calculator and not individual parameters, to vote for, let's say, a calculation strategy. Yeah, I mean, there are many different interests in the parameters, so there's the arbitrables, there's the jurors, it could be potential potential malicious actors trying to manipulate the courts, but there's a lot of effort in designing, for example, the parameter calculators, and it might not be the best strategy, but at least it's the best that we have right now. And I think the design choices and constraints might be lost in moments of, I don't know, rhetorical appeal. That there's surprising amount of thought put into the constraints in calculating reasonable parameters in the court, and I mean, let's say the most the most simple and direct arguments, which might be easily conveyable over social media or even on the governance forums. It's hard to really absorb and process complicated arguments. And anyways, long story short, I just think it could be constructive to vote on the calculator and how the calculator's constraints are set, rather than the output of the calculator, to sort of minimize, let's say, influencing the outcomes with too much rhetorical appeal. I don't know if anyone has a comment on this aspect.
Yeah, I think that's potentially a good idea. It's certainly something to discuss. One of the point I make in my talk is that it's it's chat. You have this whole issue of how the system gets good information about what the parameter should be, which is quite challenging in cryptoeconomic systems. And that other systems, maybe you could just rely on free market forces to allow people to sort of express the prices they're willing to work at by the price they charge in an open marketplace. But in a system that's very hostile, as we know blockchain systems are very hostile, where there are lots of avenues for attack, that you can't necessarily trust that. So there's room for manipulation there. And then you're okay, how else can a system get information that it needs to set good parameters? And you're kind of left with governance, or just people to vote on them. But there's a lot of technical aspects that go into what good attack-resistant parameters are, that not everyone in the community needs to be super expert on to be a good juror. So having this idea of voting on a calculator rather than voting on its outputs is maybe a good idea in the future, to have people think about broad principles without having to get into individually into sort of the technical details.
I mean, I think that the way I think about this in the long run is that most of this is going to be like self-adjusting, incentives to reach like an equilibrium between supply and demand of arbitration services in each individual court. I mean, the kind of how Uber works, when you have too much, demand of, drivers, then you have a price going up, and then there's more drivers. So this should be more or less the same with jurors. I don't know, maybe it's not a perfect analogy in the sense that maybe in the case of Uber or Airbnb also you could think of, you have more variability maybe of the supply and demand, because like, I don't know, there is an event somewhere and this creates, a higher demand to, Ubers to move people from that place to others. So in the case of Kleros, I would tend to think, and maybe I'm wrong here, that the demand of jurors would tend to be more stable on time, so you will have time to adjust parameters through governance. I mean, it's highly speculative at this point, but that's the way I think about this at this point. I don't know. What do you think, William, of that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the ideal is to have something very Uberish, where everything is just adjusting itself to like whatever constraints it needs to can satisfy behind the scenes, and nobody, end users aren't thinking about it. You're right in that, maybe the sort of like the variability of what fees need to be is less variable in Kleros, longer periods of time than in Uber, where suddenly maybe there's like a price spike, due to like local conditions of some kind. And like a sort of flip side of that is that if you give the system too much flexibility in like auto adjusting itself, that can be exploited. Like if you have the ability to like make like a flash load, take a flash load, and like make the system think that like there's a lot of demand all of a sudden for dispute resolution services, in an artificial way, so that the price of like a given dispute has like much higher fees, that could be an avenue of attack. So it's all quite subtle. But I encourage people to check out the talk. We had a blog post on this sort of in March, sort of watch this space as research progresses on these ideas.
I would say more than a blog post, it's a Bible basically of parameter setting, I do recommend to read the Bible, of course. So yeah, but it's very detailed. So, I mean, I guess we have time to think about what is the best strategy. The way I tend to think about this is it's going to be like automated. But yeah, I mean, there are so many vectors of attack that need to be considered that, yeah, at this point, it's still highly speculative. So we will keep an eye on this then. Then what else? Well, we are preparing something that I kind of said in the call before the conference. I cannot say much more about this, but I mean, 2 more weeks, guys, 2 more weeks. And then, well, you must have read Vitalik post about the different civil resistance systems and different approaches. Well, as you know, we have a proof of humanity. There are other alternatives in the market, and different trade-offs between them. So another highlight from this week. I think that's it for me, guys. Do you have any other thing that we should update in the community?
Yeah, from my side, first I've been in FT with the rest of the team, and before in Barcelona. So that's with a lot of projects, a lot of people that should. We hope they are going to become some integrations in the short term and the midterm. And then we have been receiving some new cases from Lemon, so we are working with them. Those were the most important things from the PD side.
Thank you. Well, I guess that's it. I don't know if you have some Gene, some update. But I guess I already, gave. Or maybe Abir, you want to tell what your talk was about this side, if you want.
Honestly, I just say go watch the talk, but it was basically on the idea of, where stake-based consensus mechanisms may fail in certain instances. And the instance that I particularly focused on was in cases where you're trying to sort of come to a consensus on the kind of knowledge to distribute. And over here, I distinguished what I mean as knowledge from data or information. So, because you can use stuff such as, Kleros for curation of certain questions, whether it's listing tokens, deciding if they're scammy or not, but there's a specific category of questions which require more value-based reasoning, and they require, you could call it hyper-subjectivity. In these cases, you don't really want to start using stake-based mechanisms because they tend to enforce consensus, but not cooperation or collaboration, in which case they penalize dissent. And these are the kind of questions where you want dissent to exist. So the case study I specifically discussed was one of Everypedia, where they basically tried to create a Wikipedia killer by introducing staking and slashing consensus mechanisms in the actual production of wiki articles, basically. And that entire sort of experiment failed. So I analyzed why it failed, and I identified the incorporation of these stake-based consensus mechanisms as one of the main reasons behind its failure. Of course, I only had 15 minutes, so I couldn't go more into depth. But many of these same arguments apply to the DeSci movement. The DeSci movement is pretty broad, and it involves many things. But I'm focusing on a specific aspect of the DeSci movement where they're trying to decentralize the production of knowledge by using crypto economic incentives to basically decide what sort of findings are good or not. Not findings, I should say, what kind of analyses and conclusions are good or not. Basically stuff like decentralized peer review. So, I mean, I've actually got a paper coming out which is gonna go more in depth into these specific examples of decentralized peer review and scientific publishing, in addition to the Everypedia example. I haven't finished writing it. It's already, I think, 20 pages, but I might need to write 5 to 6 more pages, format that, edit that, stuff like that. Maybe I'll end up looking for legitimate places to publish it, but, I'll be able to give you more thorough explanation in writing of why I sort of say that stake-based consensus mechanisms aren't a good idea when it comes to basically curating, producing, or distributing knowledge.
Thank you. So, guys, if you want to learn more about this, just watch the talk and read the paper after it's published in this legitimate place. I guess that's it for the week. Thank you all for coming, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.